how many animals are there in each population. And I divide my work into rats and squirrels. Let's look at the rats, the murids. There are 5 rats caught. I divide them into 4 pristine forest species and 1 disturbed forest species. And the trend is the same. There are more individuals of disturbed forest species when compared to pristine forest species. And the same goes for the squirrel, the squirrels. So, based on what I've got on richness and abundance, I enter them into, I want to check out the variations in the different study sites. And here, what it shows is the BN 1, 2, 3, 4 are the undisturbed forests, and it seems to be clustered in one group in terms of small mammal community structure. Whereas the site E, B, C, E, and F are the forest fragment, and they are very clearly, distinctly separated from the pristine forest species, whereas the disturbed forests are scattered. So the summary of my finding on the first part is the small mammal community and undisturbed and disturbed forests are significantly different from those in fragments. And the pristine forest species are mainly found in undisturbed forests, whereas disturbed forest species are mainly found in disturbed forests and forest fragments. So my next question in my PhD research is, what causes all this variation in small mammal community structure? So I look at the landscape and habitat parameters that can actually find out what causes each one to be found there. So the landscape and habitat parameters are measured, and here is the result. Factors which affect total species richness are things like the size of an area. If you have a larger area, you will have more species. And habitat parameters such as how many small and large trees you have, how many ferns you have, and what is the percentage gap opening. If you want more pristine forest species, those species which are only found in good forests, landscape parameters are not important, but things like close canopy covers, high number of small and large trees, number of burrows and tree holes, these are all important features to have good forest species. If we are talking about disturbed forest species, these are affected by the shape of the site. A more complex shape usually have more disturbed forest species and also other habitat factors. The relative abundance of small mammal species in undisturbed forests, as we said just now, were generally lower than in forest fragments. And to have more pristine forest species, the important predictors are things such as close canopy cover, higher number of small and large trees, number of burrows and tree holes. To have high number of disturbed forest species, you need conditions such as increased gap opening, higher number of saplings, increased percentage of ferns, and higher number of lianas. Now, what we have established so far is we said that the number of species you find in a place and how many of them are determined by factors such as the size of an area, the shape of an area, and also by habitat factors of that place. But what I personally feel is because the reason why certain species are found more in certain places, especially in a fragment, is because of the absence of predators in fragments. So as part of my PhD study, we also did camera traps. And what we found is most of the predators are concentrated in undisturbed forests. And I have not come across any predators in a forest fragment yet. So here is some example of collared mongoose, a Malay civet, which is very commonly found in good forests. And this animal was actually, it actually entered my trap, my small mammal trap, and it was struggling to come out. It's a small tooth palm civet, very aggressive, trying to bite my fingers off when I was trying to release it. And the leopard cat, which as you know, it's listed as threatened species in IUCN list. So we are very happy that we actually caught one in one of our pristine sites. But most importantly, this makes my day, the sun bear. This is the one and only picture of sun bear that we managed to capture after 12 years of studies. So that makes our day. Now, what is the conservation implications of my study? My study shows that it's important to conserve large, continuous, undisturbed kerangas forests. It is important to have forests with good quality. But what I did not show you here is it's also very important if you have small forests to actually set up connectivity between forest sites. So animals can actually move, and that would increase your gene flow. And as Tuan Haji Rosa was mentioning about Heart of Borneo, the Brunei government has endorsed to have 58% of our forested area, of our land area, to be put under the Heart of Borneo initiative. So what we are trying to tell you here is, development must go on. We know that. But I'm hoping that with my study, I can provide good science that may be able to provide some sort of conservation framework before development actually happens. So we cannot stop development, but perhaps we can have some clear mitigation measures to actually say, you know, is there any other way for development to happen? Instead of going across, perhaps we spend more money and go a rounded way in order to do both development.